You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Infinite diversity.
Live long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN Podcast Collective. I'm your host for today, Chrissie, and joining me is my co-host, Thad. Thad, how are you doing today?
Apologies, the most peculiar thing. Or I appear to be singing.
All systems stable. Wow, that was really bad. Okay.
Oh, mine wasn't any better.
Apologies if you have this in earbuds, and just it caused them to squeak. Okay. Yeah, we'll be talking about singing today, but not doing a lot of it, I think.
No.
Also joining us today is Carl Wonders of License to Spiel, and one of our Patreon supporters. Carl, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thanks so much for having me on. And to quote Dr. Mbega, I do not sing.
This is true.
Oh, and he really
all
does
for the
it.
benefit of everyone else listening.
We're not giving them that benefit, so.
And he really doesn't either. It was very obvious that why they only gave him a couple lines.
Yes.
I mean, I'm tone deaf, and I could still tell. I mean, I'm not technically tone deaf, but I say I'm tone deaf, and I could still tell he was way off. So, all right. Well, before we jump into our topic for the day, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons who make this show possible. Particularly our associate producers, since we're both on today. I'll say me and Carl.
Once again, making Thad look bad.
Your name listed. Oh, I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't. I usually don't say me, so I... All right. Listeners, you can hear your name listed as one of our associate producers for a monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/BQN. And with a monthly Patreon subscription of just $5, you can join our Meetings of the Hive Mind on the second Saturday of each month. Watch your Patreon messages for details. Well, we had a little bit of news this week. Thad, you were at STLV. You can tell us all about that. And also, just briefly, Simon & Schuster was sold from Paramount to something called KKR Holdings.
Yeah, it's one of those private equity things that owns so many things these days. I mean, we knew that they had been trying to sell it for a while, because there was that whole deal that fell through. So this isn't a big surprise. I wouldn't be shocked if this means more delays in Star Trek novels, though.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. As long as there still are.
Yeah.
After this.
I
don't see them canceling that line. I mean, it's not like it's not profitable.
And I don't really see them moving it to a different publisher either. I mean, they could, but Simon & Schuster, has the experience going back to, 1980, so...
Yeah, 40 years, yeah. Yeah, that's right, because Bantam had the first few.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, at least that's better than having Random House and Simon & Schuster and everything else in a monopoly. So,
yeah,
I'll take that.
Yeah.
All right, well, yeah. Tell us about STLV.
Yeah, so I literally just got home an hour ago from STLV, and it was a lot of fun. Great time. Got to see a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, got to celebrate Star Trek, got photos with some people. The ones that I was really looking forward to, I have a photo with Christina Chong and one with Melissa Navia now, which is really cool. And awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was great. Probably the biggest moment for me, and I apologize if this now makes him stop listening to the podcast, but it was meeting Aaron Waltke, and the fact that he came up to me and greeted me by name, and then told me that he does listen to Infinite Diversity and enjoys it, and that was just wild to me. Aaron Waltke, for those who may not know, is writer and executive producer on Star Trek Prodigy. Also, apparently, the Hagemans also listen to this podcast, so that's wild. Ooh. So yeah, all of Prodigy, apparently, all the Prodigy people like Infinite Diversity for some reason. So, I don't see them on the Patreon list, just saying. But...
That's a point.
But that was really cool. And I got to talk to Aaron for like an hour at the STEM Stars party, and that was a lot of fun. He's a really cool guy. I also got to meet Nami Melamad and the Hagemans, and it was really cool.
Awesome.
And one of the cool things that I managed to avoid spending the money on, but was really tempted, Terry Matalas was selling carpet squares from the Enterprise D Bridge.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Yeah, how much was he charging?
$150.
Oh, man.
For how big of a square?
Like a little one.
Oh, no, not cool. Not cool at all. Unless it's like a charity thing.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Because then you're just giving you the charity. It's not really about what you're buying.
Yeah, but I mean, he's charging that much because people were willing to pay that much.
Oh, yeah, well, of course. Of course. But that's too much.
Yeah, that's why I didn't buy one. I was tempted, though. But yeah, no, it was a great time. If you've never been to STOV, I do highly recommend it. I presume if you're listening to this podcast, you are a Star Trek fan. And it is basically the biggest congregation of Star Trek fans. Thousands of Trekkies come to Vegas every year and just get to hang out and celebrate Star Trek, and it is beautiful.
Congregation is the right word there. We have our annual pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not been a good Trekkie because I have not done my annual pilgrimage.
Now, I am going to take this podcast political briefly here.
Please.
This obviously, there were some changes to the convention this year because of the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes. Most notably, there were no promotional materials anywhere of the actors in the roles that they were in. So like all the signage and like the big banners that had like the pictures of them in the rotunda and whatnot were pictures of the actors, not pictures of the actors playing their characters, which was kind of cool. It was just neat to see things like old photos from like the 60s and 70s of like Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley and things like that. That was kind of cool. In fact, I think one of the photos they used for Leonard Nimoy is a still from the Bilbo Baggins musical video.
God. It works.
Yeah, why not?
And Creation, the company that runs STLV, did have a booth in the vendors room where they were selling photos of the actors that you could buy, so that like photos of the actors in character, so that you could buy and take it to an actor's table if you wanted it, because none of the actors had photos of themselves. Well, a couple of them did, but that's, there's a little bit of confusion and leeway, I guess, in what does or does not constitute promotion in that regard. But because the official rules are that the actors can sign anything you take to them, so that's why they did that. But yeah, the actors all had headshot photos at their booths, which was kind of cool. I have an autographed photo of Garrett Wong sticking his tongue out.
Nice. That's almost better.
Yeah, no, I thought that was cool. And
those are going to be like special collectible things years from now.
Mm-hmm. And at the panels, none of the actors could directly reference the shows or the characters they had played, or any shows or characters they had played in, when working for any of the studios. So we got more interesting things. We got things where they would sidestep around it. Like occasionally they would have to say, like, when I was working on some space show or something like that, they would sometimes do things like that. And in general, like, fan questions could not directly reference Star Trek either. So that it made for more interesting panels, in my opinion, especially as someone who has been to conventions many times. So I've heard most of the Star Trek questions that people ask. So it was more interesting, in my case, to like hear things like Anthony Rapp talking about his favorite board game and stuff like that.
I love it.
Now,
I love it.
Here's a little bit of a storm cloud on that. Most of the actors were very good about following this. There were a few slip-ups where like someone would accidentally, and then be like, oh no, I shouldn't say that, and they would move on, and mistakes happen, especially if you've been doing these conventions for 30 years. Like, you have certain habits of what you're saying on stage, and that's fine. What's not fine was the Voyager panel with Garrett Wang, Robert Beltran, and Tim Russ, where Robert Beltran decided that he was going to deliberately name characters in TV shows. In fact, do so constantly, even when it didn't make sense in the conversation, just so that he could get a rise out of people. He was belligerently trying to violate the strike because he's, well, Robert Beltran.
Yep.
And when he was asked not to do it, he would spout off about tyranny and freedom of speech, and it was just kind of a mess. And I would not be surprised at all if he gets fined for this.
Yep. As he should.
Yeah. And then he won't pay it, and he'll complain, and it'll be tyranny. And I saw some discussion of how it wouldn't be terribly difficult to replace him as a voice actor with maybe an actual Native American person. So Manu Intiraymi certainly found out that was possible, and that was in live action. So
I love that they replaced him and then killed the character immediately.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It sounds like, other than people who we would expect to be jerks about it, sounds like it was good, though. Yeah,
I think so. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I am kind of sad that it's only 4 days these days. It used, for a few years there, they were doing it 5 days starting on Wednesday, but now it's 4 days starting on Thursday, which feels a little more compressed. Like, it feels like there's less time to do things just because you have one fewer day.
Well, that sounds not just like it feels like, it literally is.
Yes.
Well, that works. Yeah. Well, then there was the one piece of actual news that we got out of STLV, because, of course, the animated shows are not under the SAG-AFTRA.
Yes, that was their
umbrella, I guess is the word.
Yeah, that was cool. There were a couple panels where they did actually talk about Star Trek. One was, there was a Picard panel with Terry Matalas, Jonathan Frakes, and Todd Stashwick. Now, Todd, of course, couldn't say too much because he was an actor, but Jonathan Frakes, as a member of the Directors Guild, could talk about the episodes he directed. And Terry Matalas, as WGA, which do not have the same promotional restrictions as SAG-AFTRA, could talk about anything he wanted to. So that was kind of cool. And then there was the Lower Decks panel, because TV animation, while under the SAG union, is a separate contract that is not under negotiation and is not part of this strike. So TV animation is still fine. In fact, people are still producing TV animation now, and they can talk about it. So that was cool, the Lower Decks panel. The only caveat being that on the Lower Decks panel, they could not talk about that Strange New Worlds crossover episode, because that is covered by the strike. And then, of course, Prodigy, not covered by the strike, so they were able to talk freely. We got a lot of cool discussion about Prodigy, and we got a clip from Season 2, which also was released on StarTrek.com at the same time, so if you were not at the convention, you can still go see it. The really big news from that is that Robert Picardo will be in that, reprising his role as the EMH.
Yay.
And we're going to get the USS Voyager A.
Yes. Which is Lamar class, right? That was
named for Hedy Lamarr.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, Hedy Lamarr. All right, we'll have a Chrissie's history corner for a moment here. Hedy Lamarr is known for, if the average person, if they know who Hedy Lamarr is, they probably know her as the first woman to have bare breasts on camera in a movie. Okay. And of course, she was quite well known for that. But she also invented frequency hopping, or the thing that leads to frequency hopping, as a way to help the Allies find German submarines during World War II. And that setup is the basis of how we all function with wireless internet and all of that, and wireless communication, cell phones, and the like. So, yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah. Really cool to see them naming a ship for her.
Whole class.
Yeah.
So, but I guess that means there is a Lamarr ship out
Presumably,
there,
yes. The first ship of the class would have been the USS Lamarr. Also, there's a really neat little deep cut in the clip that I didn't pick up on, but I think your Hillenbrand is the one that found it, as usual.
Of course.
And it was that the Doctor refers to Janeway as Catherine. And there was an episode of Voyager where he tried to do that, and she immediately shut him down and said, "I wasn't aware we were on a first-name basis." And so apparently their relationship has evolved, and now in the future they are on a first-name basis, which is kind of cool.
Well, he's not part of her command structure anymore,
right?
Necessarily, at least not in the way that he was.
Yeah.
And when was that? I mean, it wasn't like it was, the middle of season 7.
No.
I saw the picture. She has the kind of bob haircut, but I don't know my Voyager hairstyles well enough to pinpoint beyond the bun of steel. So
yeah, I'm not entirely sure which episode that was in either. Hold on. Oh yeah, it is from Virtuoso, which is later in the show.
That is, yeah.
Towards the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 Virtuoso,
I bet that was more contextual.
Yes,
third from the end or something.
Because he was being a real ass in that
He
episode.
was, yes, he said it as, yes, he was being he was a pompous ass in that scene. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, because that's from season 6. But that's still, I still like that little nod, and Aaron Waltke commented on it, pointing it out. So yeah, they definitely did put that in as a reference to that, which I think is pretty cool.
I expect whenever we see those references that it's intentional. With something like Prodigy, with something like Lower Decks, Actually, with all of them, but I think it's a little harder for the live action shows to get as much of that in.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, it sounds like we will have Prodigy in one form or another. I know.
Yes.
All been
oh yeah. Sorry.
That, no.
The other big news about Prodigy was the Hagelman said that they are in active talks. Obviously couldn't give details on that, but they are 99% sure that Prodigy will have a new home.
Good.
Great.
Good. And then Paramount can look at it and go, oh, we shouldn't have let that go.
Well,
oops.
It is very much, at the moment, a seller's market for already produced television content because of the strikes. So, yeah. I think in this case, the strikes really work in Prodigy's favor because studios are looking for content to show because they can't make new content right now.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm willing to bet that if Paramount knew the strikes were coming, they wouldn't have canceled Prodigy.
Yeah. That would make too much sense. All right. Well, sounds like you had a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Everybody should go to STLV. I've not been. I need to go next year, maybe.
You definitely should go. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A few people asked me if you ever came to STLV. So, yeah. Yep. I talked to a few listeners. Thank you very much to all of you. I will probably forget one of your names, so I'm not going to say any of your names just out of egalitarianness. But
reasonable.
You were all really cool, and thank you for listening. I guess I did say Aaron Waltke's name, but he's not quite the same.
That's a little different.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun. People definitely, yes, I think you were definitely missed in Vegas, Chrissie. A lot of people wanted to meet you. I heard a lot of compliments about you. A lot of people said, told me, oh, your co-host is really great. And so, yeah.
You said that like it was a setup for kind of a Groucho Marx joke, and then your co-host is great, but what about you? You know.
Well, I mean,
sound like a setup, but yeah.
I have no illusions over the fact that Chrissie is the better host than I am. But
I'm not saying that. I was waiting for a punchline there. That's what I was. But I didn't say it right. Anyway, well, yeah, we're gonna try to go next year. It's just it always hits. It's the end of the summer,
right?
You know, and it's earlier now than it has been. I think wasn't it usually like the second or third weekend?
It moves around some. It's always in August, but it's traditionally it's been the first week of August more often than not, but it has moved some.
Okay.
But yeah, next year it will be the first week of August again. It'll start on August 1st, actually.
Okay. I have to just put it in the calendar now and make it happen. But yeah. Anyway, we have an episode to talk about here.
Yes,
oh boy, do we!
An episode called Subspace Rhapsody, which is it sounds like it is the episode that required the most amount of rehearsals and work on it in all, what are we up to, 900 and some odd episodes? Which makes sense, given what it is. So this is our Trek musical. Starting with you, Carl. Initial thoughts, first impressions?
I mean, this could take a while. Bottom line, I really, really, really enjoyed it. It's a hard one to talk about because there's so many levels that you can approach it from. You know, was it a good musical? Were the songs any good? Were they well performed? And was it a good episode overall? I think my answers to that are yes and yes, for the most part, and absolutely. I think, to their credit, they managed to pull off what could have been a trifle of an episode and have it be extraordinarily consequential. There's so much character work going on in this episode, and I think they did it exactly the way it should have been done. I loved the in-universe explanation for, as Pike said, why are they singing? I think this is probably based on my reading of the internet, which is never advisable. Possibly the most divisive episode to ever be made in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty. It's no Tuvix, but yeah, it's pretty close.
Well, I mean, there's arguments in Tuvix, but it's not. If you read the internet, this is either the best episode that's ever been made, or it's a piece of garbage and isn't Star Trek. And I think, both of those are a bit hyperbole.
Yeah, I'm not in either of those camps. I suppose I'm certainly closer to the best episode ever camp. But that's, I mean, I don't even consider it the best episode this season.
No. I will say that because it's Paramount and they don't know how to market things, the album was not available until the next day.
That was ridiculous.
That was strange. And, Thad and I were talking about that in our chat group, and the only thing I could think was that they weren't able to release it because of the strike. That there was something wrapped up in that, and then it showed up, and I'm like,
yeah,
what's wrong with you people?
I mean, we can talk. When we got the email with the screener for this episode, it came with a link to reserve the digital album on your music platform of choice. So I'm like, oh, cool, it'll drop when the episode drops. Yep. And then episode came out, and nope.
Yep.
It has literally been the only thing that is played on my phone since Friday. Other than a couple podcasts. But as far as music goes, it has been exclusively in my listening rotation. I've listened to it countless times. I still hear some new things. And when we talk about the songs, we can say more about that. But
I was listening to it on loop in my drive home from Maryland this morning. So, yeah.
Yeah. I have been listening to it a few times, too. Mm-hmm.
But,
probably not quite that much. But...
Yeah. And as I'll say is, as somebody who really enjoys musicals, I very much enjoyed this one. And it's grown on me every time I've watched / listened to it. So.
Same.
Yeah.
Well, Thad. Initial thoughts, first impressions. Anything to add there from what Carl said, actually?
I pretty much agree with Carl. I really enjoyed it. I also love musicals. I love Star Trek. I think they are two great tastes that taste great together. And yeah,
you put your musicals in my Star Trek, and you put your Star Trek in my musicals. Sorry, I interrupt. But
no, you're fine. I just thought it was worked out really well. I think by giving it an in-universe explanation, it works well. And there were... I do remember when it was first announced, there were a bunch of people on Twitter who were saying, there better be an in-universe explanation for this. And, like, why on earth would you think there wouldn't be?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't one who posted that up on Twitter, but I was one who was like, oh, I hope the in-universe explanation is good.
Right, but you knew that there would be one.
But there had to be one, yeah. Even if it was holodeck malfunction,
Right.
Which they aren't doing, but yeah.
No,
I was not expecting an alternate universe of Earth musicals, and particularly English language Earth musical styles, but we can get into that in a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes sense that in this alternate universe, is this the same universe where all of Broadway has taken place?
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought there was that great line very, very, very early on in the show when they're in the conference room, and Pike's like, well, that happened. And at one point,
that was perfect.
Kirk says, I thought this was all something you had rehearsed together, and then I joined in too. And that's like exactly like every musical where it's like, how come everybody knows the words even though they're off stage and they come in and join in the song and blah, blah, blah. And it was such a great meta look at the world of musicals anyway, in general. I thought it was wonderful. Loved it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it from start to finish.
Yep.
I really liked the songs. I enjoyed how they made a story that worked for it. I loved the glam pop Klingons. Yeah, it was great. I especially loved that the Klingons referred to the singing as their dishonor.
Yes.
That was perfect. Yes.
To go back to the the in-universe explanation, I've seen people complain like, as though this makes it any better. It's like, why couldn't it have been like a Q or a Trelane thing that caused them to do this? And one, Q makes no sense given the timeline. But I can't help but think that...
Well, they have a kind of Trelane thing going on right now.
Sure. Yeah, right. But, like, I was thinking, like, if it was a Trelane or a omnipotent being causing them to sing, I mean, those same people would then come out and say they're just ripping off Buffy. Because isn't that the reason that everyone starts singing in Buffy is because there's a alternate, all-present force that's causing them to do these things. So I liked that they went a different way with that. And it wasn't, some omnipotent being making them do silly things. It was coming naturally to them given the universe they were kind of cohabitating, I guess.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. The really silly thing that we see Q do is on Lower Decks, and it's because it's Lower Decks when they're all playing soccer dressed as chess pieces, so it's not... Of all of the adjectives I could apply to Q, silly is not one I would usually use. So that definitely would not have worked.
Well, maybe the Robin Hood episode, but...
Yeah.
Well, okay. But even that, there's context.
Yeah.
Historical context.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the whole... the second one, the one in season 2... season 1. Sorry, the one in season 1. Yeah. That one is... There's not too much context there, where they're like...
But it's not silly. It starts out, you think it's silly, but then it becomes very, literally deadly serious.
Yeah, that's true.
Although it is rather ridiculous that Tasha Yar starts crying on the bridge for no reason. Not no reason, but... But
she's in the penalty box. She doesn't want to be in the penalty box.
She's in the penalty box, yeah.
And there's only room for one person in the penalty box. So that's not a good episode.
No.
It has some moments.
It does.
If I'm
does have the
perfectly
moments
honest, I'm not a fan of
Hamlet moment is
most
good.
Q episodes. Like, I love Deja Q, and...
Q who?
Yeah,
Tell
Q
me
who.
you love Q who.
Yeah, of course. But in general, and I mean, all good things, of course. But, like, Q just showing up and being annoying, it gets old fast.
Yeah.
I also love Death Wish, but...
That's also not silly.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, listeners will know from my having talked about it, I'm not much on musicals. I don't know. At some point in my childhood, and it had to have been... I'm trying to think, because I was just shy of 10 when my sister was born, and there's nobody in between. So I had this like moment of getting to the age where I was just about done with Disney movies, and I didn't get to be done with Disney movies because my sister was just starting to get to the age of being involved in them. And at some point, it
understand the concept of being done with Disney movies.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, no, I'm going to say I was done with Disney movies.
Yeah, no, no, that's fair. I would say there certainly was a period in my life where, like, as a teenager, where I believed I was too old for that sort of thing, and then as an adult, I realized that's silly.
Yeah.
Oh, it is, and I don't mean that as a like I don't mean that as saying adults should not watch Disney movies. I'm saying just me personally.
Gotcha.
And it was. At some point, it occurred to me that it didn't make sense that people were just breaking into song randomly. And at that point, it was like, oh, I'm not into musicals because of that. So, and then I think I've seen like 4 musicals my whole life. You'd have to count Hamilton on TV. I've never seen one no, I take that back. I have seen one in a theater because the theater department, there was a kid in the theater department at University of Wyoming who turned the Lysistrata into a musical. And it was fantastic. It was beautiful. It was in 2003, so they turned it into a commentary on the Iraq War. And the big, I'm trying to think, it wasn't the big number with everybody, but like the one that was the most remembered that you heard people singing around campus so much was called the Dildo Lullaby, which if you're familiar with Lysistrata, there's a whole discussion of Lysistrata is a play of the women of Athens and Sparta decide to go on sex strike, in order to stop the Peloponnesian War. And so you can imagine all sorts of commentary there. And so I liked that musical, and I enjoyed Hamilton, although I can't say I'm going to, stick that CD in and listen to it all the time. But this one, I was like, oh, okay. And maybe it is because there's an in-universe explanation. I don't know. I'm one of those weird ones who was like, why are animals singing in The Lion King? Animals don't speak English, I was that person. So I guess that shows you the mindset that I have. But I did greatly enjoy this. I did get the soundtrack. I have listened to it a few times. Maybe it's just because it's Star Trek. I don't know. But it was awesome.
Yeah, I was going to suggest it's probably because it's Star Trek.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I posted on Twitter the day it came out something to the effect of, this isn't necessarily for everyone. Not everybody likes musicals, but if you don't like it, then there's lots of other Trek to watch. I don't remember exactly what I said. And then, of course, because it's Twitter, somebody comes in and says, well, that's like me walking into a literature class and saying that I don't appreciate postmodernism. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Not all the same thing. Personal preference,
There definitely were some people that were a lot louder in their, wanting to be the main character and saying, well, this is terrible and this isn't for me.
I felt like the entire group of individuals out there that cannot abide the existence of Star Trek Discovery got distilled down to critique of one episode of Strange New Worlds. Because it basically, to me, felt like a bunch of fragile male egos coming out and saying, I hate musicals, therefore this is dumb. And, not my Star Trek. And it's like, if you can't come up, and you're perfect. Like Bill Smith, I respect Bill Smith a lot. He does not care for musicals, and he said as much. Like, this just isn't for me. He didn't deny its existence. He didn't say this isn't an episode of Star Trek. This is forever ruined Star Trek for me. It's just an episode he doesn't like. Just like I'm never going to willingly go and watch Aquiel from TNG because I think it's a terrible episode of Star Trek. It's still an episode of Star Trek. and like, just the idea that I feel like they're worried, like, oh, this damages, again, my fragile male ego, because it's almost exclusively men that are complaining in this regard. Yep. Because, again, it is Twitter. And these people can just, go screw themselves as far as I'm concerned. Like, just go away. If you have legitimate critiques, and I have some critiques about some of the songs and stuff, but, that's fine. Just, you don't get to write something off and then say it shouldn't exist because I don't like it. And anyway, rant over.
Yeah. No. And just saying I don't like something doesn't mean that the person is saying it shouldn't exist.
Right.
It's an overread. But it's interesting that you made that connection with the Discovery haters. And I think part of it is because a lot of the Discovery haters who hated it because of the diversity of the cast, let's say. We'll just give it an umbrella definition. Yeah. Came back to Trek, quote unquote, came back to Trek with Strange New Worlds because, we've got the cishet male captain, and the series starts with him and his girlfriend, and it's back to normal,
out in his,
and then all of a sudden
he's butch singing. Ranch out in Montana, with his big beard and everything, being all alpha male. Yeah. But,
so I think that it bothered people, because of that. And I could go on a whole other thing about how we can connect that with the political situation that's been happening and started about the same time Discovery came out and all of that, but we won't get into that right now.
Well, I mean, when we did because I was lucky enough to join you for the kind of wrap up of season 1, prelude to this season, and we talked about how those people came back because of the cis white male captain, and how right from episode 1 they got thrown in their face a lot of messaging that probably made them feel uncomfortable, and too bad.
Yep.
And I've seen some discourse on this, and I just want to highlight how much I love Anson Mount's portrayal of Pike, and he's probably one of the best male role models out there on television right now, at least as far as cishet male role models go. He cooks, he takes care of his crew, he's, unfortunately he can't sing, we'll get to that, but I just enjoy the way he's essentially going against the type that they thought those folks thought they were gonna get with a captain, and I applaud them for going in the direction they did with him. So
Agreed. I love that he cooks. I love that he takes care of people. I love that he can take care of himself. Now, admittedly, in the 23rd century, you don't have to do laundry, but I'm sure he's capable. And he does do the dishes, and and I know this is very domestic sounding, and I'm not, there's lots of other markers as well, but a man who can take care of himself.
Yep.
So, we start out by running into a subspace fold while they're doing some tests. And I absolutely love the beginning because Uhura has become a switchboard operator.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if I had the memeing skills, I would have taken that the still from the first episode of Mad Men when Peggy gets introduced to the women at the switchboard, and they all stop for a minute and look at her. Because that's exactly what it reminded me of. And then we run into the fold because we put Anything Goes up on the... I was about to say up on the speakers, but I guess that isn't really what it is. They send it through subspace.
Yeah, Patti LuPone is now part of Star Trek.
Yeah. And of course, there's a Paramount connection there because that was in the second Indiana Jones movie.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, Kate Capshaw sings at the beginning of Temple of Doom. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about communication through music. There's a lovely point there about music being fundamental harmonics and mathematic. And, of course, we come back to that later with Spock's song. Because, of course, it has to be mathematic.
It's a nice tie back to Children of the Comet when she's singing to the device and it responds to music. And there's that whole conversation about, how the harmonics are kind of universal language that can be used.
Yeah. So while that's going on, we get little bits and pieces of what's going on around the ship, kind of like it's just normal kind of day. And Christine Chapel's worried about whether or not she's gotten into this fellowship. Okay, and Pike and Marie Battelle are trying to figure out where they're going to go on vacation. And then we have a musical. So we go into the opening sequence, which I had seen somewhere that they were like, oh, they redid lyrics for it and such. And I had this crazy thought for a moment that we would get the original lyrics that Roddenberry wrote for it.
Yeah, I did too.
In a new form. And I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't, but it's okay that we didn't too.
Yeah.
But that sounded cool. And of course, it was Status Report before that. I got ahead of myself.
Status Report was
so
great.
I guess we go song by song. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit all over the place.
No, that's fine. And listeners, I apologize that I'm probably quieter than usual just because I had all sorts of fun travel adventures coming home from STLV.
All right. Well, so Status Report's the first song. What did we think about that? Work, doesn't work?
I thought it was great.
That was great. It's a great opening act.
Yeah.
For the
nice
show.
as an ensemble with everybody.
Piece. Yep.
Yeah, I liked it too.
And I think it does a great job of doing something that they did really well through the entire musical, is that the writers, or however this was put together, because we had new people come in to write the songs and everything, but they were very, very cognizant of, we have about 3 tiers of people here in terms of their singing ability. You have the professional singers, or at least the ones who seem to be professionally trained, which I count maybe 3 of them. You have the ones...
I think only 2.
Well, okay, 2, but then Rebecca Romaine's also very good, I thought. But clearly Christina Chong and Celia Rose Goodman are the top tier of the group here. You have some people who, in some ways surprised me a lot, actually, are quite good, if somewhat of an amateur singer. And then you have the people who needed to not be exposed too much. And I think this song in particular does a good job of it. And then they were throughout the musical, they didn't make anybody, they didn't do a Russell Crowe in Les Miserables thing here with this. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, as I alluded to before, I absolutely adore everything Anson Mount does, but singing is not one of his strengths, and they didn't make it have to be one. Because as the captain, he probably should have had a bigger role to play musically, and his only song really is a bit of a joke, and it gets cut off in a very amusing way before it becomes more.
I wish there was a longer version of that on the soundtrack.
Yeah. I think whether or not people are good at singing isn't really, like, obviously we want to hear people who are good at singing, but I think having some few who aren't actually works within the context of the story.
Yes.
Because they're all being forced to sing.
Yep.
So it's like, yes, some people are going to be good at it, some people are not, like Dr. Mbenga, and and we go from there. So I thought that was part, it worked as part of the story. Obviously, it was also because of reality. But yeah, it seems like they were very aware of who was going to give the best performance, let's say.
I mean, perhaps they lucked out in a lot of ways that the people with the most emotion to carry through the story, because they've been carrying the emotion through the whole season, also happened to be the ones who could sing really well.
Whoa, plot twist. Maybe they've deliberately, all of this season has been building to this, and that's why we had emotional episodes with La'an and Uhura.
Could be.
Maybe. What a concept. They have a plan for things.
Yeah, so we talked about this episode a little bit with former host Justin Ozer, and he he has very strong feelings about autotune. But
Yes, he does. But let's be clear. One thing, he is he's coming at this from a professional standpoint.
Yes,
he and his wife run a music production company. His wife is a very accomplished musician. Everybody go listen to EEP. They're awesome. So he is coming at it with an ear that I sure as hell don't have.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out that he, like, personally for me, the only one I could tell was auto-tuned was Mbenga.
Yep.
I mean, the Klingons, obviously, because that was auto-tuned stylistically. But the only one I could tell that they had actually done any modification to, like, the natural voice was Mbenga. But according to Justin, everyone except Celia and Christina were auto-tuned to some extent.
I did find it a little jarring, and they do a good job of covering it up, I think, because the way they break into song isn't, like, they start a scene. The one that really caught my ear, honestly, was Christine Chappell's song, where she's talking in dialogue and then starts singing, and you can definitely hear a difference there. I don't know how you get around that, honestly.
Right.
But and it was one of those things that on first watch I found it a little jarring, but afterwards I was like, it is what it is. It's fine.
I really like that number though, so I think it works.
I didn't even notice the difference, but then again, as I said, I don't have that kind of ear. So
yeah.
All right. Well, we've got status report, and then the opening sequence, and then we're in the conference room, and that happened. That was beautiful.
We get a direct reference to Buffy the Vampire Slayer with the what happens next. Will we be turned into bunnies?
I do not want to. I do not wish to be a bunny.
I do not think that we will be bunnies.
Such a good line. Oh man,
beautiful. Beautiful. And of course, I didn't mention. Of course, Kirk has come on to the ship to shadow Una as a first officer. Apparently, the Farragut has no staff. They have so much duplicated staff that anybody can just go anywhere at any time.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. Like, who is on the Farragut?
Now, I do understand the idea of shadowing somebody for the job you're about to take on. That actually makes more sense than what was going on with the last time he was on. But so why he's there doesn't bother me, but there were a lot of memes about, why are you on my ship? And there was that old style
pocketbook cover
original
was so
series.
Yeah, that was
books.
good.
Yes.
That was a good
That
one.
was beautiful. So, right, and Kirk says he really appreciates the way Spock explains things. He almost understood it. So then we have a beautiful callback to Q&A with Connect to Your Truth, with Una talking about how she would really enjoy being able to do musicals, and Gilbert and Sullivan and all that. And I thought her singing was pretty good. The what's his face who plays Kirk?
Paul
His singing was
Wesley.
all right. Paul Wesley, thank you.
Yeah.
Paul Wesley's singing was all right. That was a cute little scene. What do we think on that one?
I liked it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that it was either a Gilbert and Sullivan pastiche. My immediate thought was the old Sherman and Sherman songs from like 60s Disney movies, like Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and that style of song. Just immediately came to mind, which I thought was cute, and that was before they actually made the Gilbert and Sullivan reference.
Well, now I'm going to have substitutionary locomotion stuck in my head for the rest of the day, so thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
There's worse things.
I appreciate the deep cut poll that you had there of all the songs you could have chosen.
Right. So then we have La'an watching that. On first watch, it almost looks like she's feeling jealous about the fact that Kirk and Una are singing and dancing, and then you realize that she's not feeling jealous about it. She's actually like analyzing that this is a security measure, and she's not jealous of Una spending the time with Kirk, but jealous of the concept of being able to let go and relax and change her paradigm.
Yes.
Which brings us into how would that feel about La'an's struggle with these things.
Yeah, I had exactly the same thought that you did on first watch, because, you know, it starts off, she's kind of watching them from behind a stanchion there. And this was actually that was the moment when I realized that they were actually doing more than just songs.
Yeah.
Because the easy way, they do this twice with the same relationship, actually, but the easy way would have been to have her be jealous that, oh, I saw Una dancing with Kirk, and I'm really making dreamy eyes at Kirk, and that makes me feel jealous, and I don't like it. And the fact that it went in the other direction, where she's just, you know, I wish I could do what they're doing, and made a song about her struggles. And the struggles that she's been going through the entire season, starting with episode 3, I thought was really well done, and I think it's one of my favorite songs of the show because, you know, again, she's probably the second best singer of the cast, and, you know, she gets a belter of a ballad to sing and does really well with it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that the tease that we got for there being a La'an Kirk relationship was actually just in her imagination.
Yep.
And the whole, you know, the season is like, oh, when is that going to happen? Oh, never did.
I mean, I thought it was an interesting and probably the right choice to make that they didn't make that later scene into a song between the two of them. That it was a heavy emotional scene that normally would have been, according to the laws of musicals, I guess, that we're living under in this episode, would have been a song. I mean, she points out, like, I don't want to break into a 17th century sea shanty, so I'm just going to say this now. I like how Kirk, you know, I love the Carol Marcus name drop that we got. The fact that he knows that David's pregnant, and it kind of explains why. And
Carol's pregnant with David.
Carol's pregnant with
David. Is not.
David is not pregnant.
It's okay.
Pardon me.
I knew what you meant.
You know what I meant. No, so, and then, you know, it kind of explains why Kirk is the horn dog we see in TOS, because he's committed to this relationship. He says, yeah, I feel this connection with this person, but, you know, I'm in a serious relationship. I'm going to be a father, blah, blah, blah. And then Carol essentially asks him to take a hike at some point.
Yeah.
And not be the father that he seems to want to be at this point in his life. And it's an interesting callback to that scene he has with La'an in Lost in Translation, when he is explaining what it was like growing up with a father who was in Starfleet and how they moved around and everything, and he didn't quite understand why his father would go off and help strangers instead of spending time with his family. So I just thought it was a neat kind of tie-up of a whole lot of things that have been floating out there. And again, I think they handled that. I was worried they were going to go in the obvious direction, and once again they proved that they're better writers than I give them credit for, and did something different.
Yeah, and I do just want to cover this real quick because I mean, normally I would not have had this conversation with 5 different people, but like because I was at a Star Trek convention last
STLV,
weekend,
yep, that's it.
Yes, I had like 4 or 5 different people ask me if this contradicts Wrath of Khan, because you may not remember the one scene, but
I did what you wanted. I stayed away.
Exactly. There's the scene where Kirk and Carol Marcus are talking, having a heart-to-heart, while Chekhov is lying in the background. And yeah, the first thing Kirk says when he sees David is, he asks Carol, is this David? So clearly he knows about David. And then, yeah, they talk about it, and yeah, he says, I did what you want. I stayed away. And yeah, she clearly wanted him out of it, but he knew about David. So, it's easy if you haven't seen Wrath of Khan 37 times like I have, 47 probably, times like I have, to not remember that particular line. But yeah, Kirk definitely did know about Carol's pregnancy.
Yeah, and you know, that's a scene that, you know, when I was 10, that's the scene that I checked out, or I ran out to get a drink of something, you know, because it's a boring adults talking to each other. There's not a lot of action happening. after we've had this big climactic showdown. And there's that scene, the line later when he says, why didn't you tell him? Like he's very quietly upset with Carol because she never told David that Kirk was his father. Yeah. And, she has all these reasons, but he feels wronged by her and has felt wronged by her since this happened, really. And that's why, in the turbolift scene earlier when he's with Bones and Bones makes a quip about, when it rains, it pours, because Carol Marcus is calling and Kirk gets really pissed with him. And now that scene also makes more sense. Like, why are you so upset about this? Anyway.
Yes, as a doctor, you should appreciate the dangers of reopening old wounds.
Right.
It's sort of a reverse Jack Crusher situation.
I was about to say,
Because in Jack knows who his father is, but Picard doesn't know about Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the thing, since we're on Wrath of Khan for a moment, one thing that has always bothered me about that whole situation is the comment that David makes about that overgrown Boy Scout you used to hang around with, and she says Jim Kirk was many things, but he was never a Boy Scout. So he knows he knows that Kirk is a person, beyond just in the Federation news or whatever. He doesn't know Kirk is his father. Who does he think is his father? What has she told him?
He probably doesn't know who his father is.
Yeah.
But it's weird that he knows that she used to hang out with Kirk. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe, that lends to, maybe he's remembering as a very young child, maybe there was an attempt to be together and stay together and co-parent. Because the whole, I did what you wanted, I stayed away, does not have to happen, right away. It could happen when David is 5. It could, So maybe he's got old memories of that. But it always did bother me that obviously he doesn't know who his father is. And it's like, I mean, admittedly, you don't have to know these things. And in the 23rd century, now you don't have to actually, have a man actually there to produce a child. You can go get in vitro with, random person's sperm. But so maybe that's what she told him. It always bothered me. It just, I'm hoping, it's not going to get resolved in Strange New Worlds, but at least I'm glad to see that we're making some of those connections there. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I like, Carl, that you brought it back to the earlier episode where he was talking about the family stuff, because you can now go back and see, this is on his mind.
Yeah.
Maybe he had just found out about this. About the
that's
pregnancy.
true, yeah.
So, yeah. There's something terribly ironic about the idea that Kirk had the potential to be in a relationship with a descendant of Khan Noonien Singh, and then Khan Noonien Singh, of course, is his great rival and causes the situation that kills Spock and all of that.
Yeah.
And then that creates the Genesis planet on which his son is killed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really heavy connection here, and it's just...
Yeah.
It's almost like he's standing there with a Acme weight over his head to make it funnier than it actually is. Yeah. Yeah, I liked Lan's song. I think everyone has experienced that moment of like, hey, this is the person that I've presented myself to be, and this is the person that I function like, and I'm not necessarily enthused with that anymore, and it's really hard to change.
Yep.
So that's universal truths. So La'an then goes to talk to Pike about this potentially being a security threat, and she's right. And then he proves that she's right because they have this discussion, this private conversation on the bridge. Yeah. This was cut off. I agree with you, Thad. I wish there was a whole rendition of it.
I understand it being cut off for the story in the episode, but like there are many times when you get where like a soundtrack will have a longer version of a song than what you actually see, and I was really hoping for that, so I was disappointed that the song on the soundtrack cuts off just when it does in the episode. Because this one particular, for whatever reason, it's catchy and it's been in my head ever since I first saw the episode.
It's a private conversation. Well, it's a very catchy.
Yeah,
like the rhyming and everything. Yeah. Carl, you were saying that Anson Mount doesn't sing very well. This is
well. He's yeah. I mean, I think they cut off the song in the right moment because it sounds like it's going into like, I was talking to a friend of mine about it and about how it's almost like a hairband ballad that's about to start here, and for his deficiencies in his singing voice, I love his acting. It reminded me a bit of the medieval episode when he's he's in full on like on his knees with his arm out, kind of like that Picard meme pose, and he gets cut off and he's just like, wait, what am I doing? And just this embarrassed look he has on his face, I think is fantastic, and he pulls it off so well. And the song's catchy. I agree.
I wonder if they did that because of the Picard meme.
I don't know. I've seen people put them next to each other.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so that proves a security threat. So now we're going to try to blow it up, because that's what we do. We tried to unzip it or zip it back up, or however you want to put it, and that didn't work. And so now we're going to try to blow it up. So Kirk and La'an now are going to go get particles from this thing. They're going to try to beam them in. La'an does not want to be anywhere near Kirk because she realizes the security threat issue, which leads to her talking to Una about it. And of course, then we have the song Keeping Secrets, which was a nice connection for the stories that we've had for both of them coming together. Yeah.
And it's a nice juxtaposition or a complementary song to La'an's song earlier.
Yes.
Very much so.
Because it's essentially, Una admitting, like, this is how I used to be, and now I've learned that that's not the way I should be. Like, that's not how to live anymore. This is probably the song that grew on me the most over the course of multiple watches and listens. On first watch, it felt like a song that was more... It didn't seem necessary to me. But then the more I've listened to it, I like that it's kind of a take on cheesy 80s ballads, or possibly same friend of mine, Jonathan, was saying about how it reminded him of Defying Gravity from Wicked a little bit, where they literally turn off the gravity and go floating, which is a moment that I just laughed out loud when it happened because it was amazingly cheesy and wonderful.
Yeah, that was a little much for me, but it also was like, okay, I get it.
I'm kind of disappointed we didn't get a song with the Kirk brothers together.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been
something. Yeah.
Because
they were working together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was strange, that scene with them. It seemed unnecessary.
They had to get the two of them together for some reason, I guess.
Yeah, and they got to snipe at each other, I guess. Weird. Yeah. So we have that. They go and collect the particles and send them to engineering, and they get exploded, and it makes things worse. And then we run into some Klingons, and the last thing anyone wants is singing Klingons. I have to say, if you say that, you really have not heard good Klingon opera.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sung by Michael Dorn.
When she said that, I'm like, excuse you? That is exactly what I want.
Yeah. Although not what they were singing.
Oh, no, I absolutely loved what they were singing. That was amazing.
It was, but I wouldn't want more of it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. We got just the right amount of that.
Yeah. But I suppose, maybe the Federation doesn't know about Klingon opera yet, and Una doesn't know about Klingon opera,
maybe.
So that's fine.
Yeah, so it's really cool that Klingon captain is played by Bruce Horak, who portrayed Hemmer in Season 1. And I absolutely love when they say, we have located the abominable source of our dishonor. Like, because obviously to the Klingons, breaking out into song is dishonorable.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then that did not make sense to me, because how often have we've seen Klingons break into song more than probably any other group.
The difference being, this is making them sing about their emotions, which is absolutely not a thing that a proud Klingon warrior would do.
And in a pop tune instead of a drinking song or an opera or something.
I love that pop tune, especially the lyrics, where they're just like saying, we're gonna slay you with our mek'leths. I mean, it's amazing.
We'll slay you. It's just... Yeah. It was interesting, though, because that, recognizing that, of course, this is something, context of the show in real life, but we are only seeing, as I mentioned before, human musicals based on, let's say, Western, which Western is, European in the Americas and North Africa. And I've been trying to come up with a better way to say Western, but I haven't yet. So we don't see any other, I'm sure the Balkans don't have musicals, but no question. But maybe there's an Andorian musical or, something else. We only see human ones. Again, product of real life. I get that, but just putting it out there. So then they figure out that they need to analyze what's going on with the musicals, analyze the environment around them. And this is how we find out that Chapel and Spock have not talked about her fellowship that she's going to be leaving the ship for apparently only 3 months. It's 3 or 6 months, something like that.
3 months.
So not
yeah,
not like a total relationship breaking period of time, unless she's expecting to go elsewhere after. She's not necessarily expecting to come back to Enterprise.
Right. I mean, we very quickly see they certainly had a whirlwind romance, didn't they? Like, we never really even see them together that much and before they're broken up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we can talk about this and I guess Spock's song together, maybe, because...
Oh, yeah.
Well, one, I think
it's
it's brilliant musical 101 that they have the exact same song, but it's in completely different contexts.
Very Les Mis.
Yeah. I think that... I mean, the thing that I think that breaks up their relationship isn't that she's going away for 3 months. It's the line when she says, if I have to leave you to get what I want, I'm going to do it, because... And this is 100% consistent with her ever going back to Spock Amok when she's talking about why she doesn't have relationships, and she doesn't believe that she should ever compromise herself for somebody else, and she's admitting that to him in song. And this is another example. They've been doing this with T'Pring. They did this obviously with Kirk, and now the Spock and Chapel relationship that we see in TOS. I mean, this breaks Spock. In his song, he's like, I put myself out there, I started feeling these things because I thought that was the way forward, and this was going to help me in my relationship with this person, and it turns out feelings suck, and all I feel is miserable, so I'm just going to go back to logic now, and this explains why Spock is the Spock we know in TOS. And I went back and rewatched that twice now in the season, gone back and rewatched that scene from Naked Time, when Chapel goes to Spock and confesses that she loves him, and Spock leaves and then nearly flips out afterwards. And this just puts a whole new color on that, where it's like, you burned me emotionally, Nurse Chapel. Why? You tell me you love me now. I can't trust you.
Yeah.
And it explains, she goes off and presumably has her Roger Corby experience and all that stuff, and comes back and realizes, the Roger Corby, that sounds like a band name.
I was about to say.
But, now, you think about it, she realizes, no, I really do love Spock. And that's why she pines after him in TOS, and why he has nothing to do with her. It gives her the cold shoulder all the time. It makes total sense. And I think this is a great way of exposing all of that. And recoloring all of these relationships we thought we knew already. Yeah.
This whole season, I have been expecting that he would be the one to end it.
Yep.
And that is what would cause her to turn into the lovesick 60s character, I guess, for lack of a better term. But of course, we rarely see her doing anything else. So it's entirely possible that she's lovesick, but then also very, functional all the rest of the time, working on her career.
Yeah.
This version of Chapel, this version of Chapel we're seeing, she's very confident in herself. She's very career focused. She is willing to make these sacrifices, and you can spin it around that she understands the regret. She regrets what she did. She regrets breaking it off. And then that leads to the same place that we're in TOS, just for different reasons. And I love how it is part of Spock's story as well now, too.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, well, that was a thing. Now I'm going to go on and do other things. So.
I mean, I wonder if this is what, Kiva Goldsman and them were getting at when they're like, we're not breaking canon, but we're bending it. And it's providing the subtext that absolutely was not there in TOS.
Yeah.
Like, this was never anything that anyone was thinking about when they filmed those scenes in TOS. Like, it was just thinly written 60s female character, but this kind of excuses a lot of what we saw on that show in a way, because it's now backfilling a lot of things in a way that makes those performances somehow both consistent with what we see on the screen, but then get informed by a whole lot of stuff that obviously wasn't there when they filmed it, but it all works for me anyway.
Yeah, beautifully. Yeah, so then, as you said, we were getting into the Spock song as well. I love the double meaning of "I'm the X."
Yeah.
And how he's turning his relationship into an algebraic
Yes.
formula, which is a beautiful shift, because we've gone from go back to those old scientists and he's laughing and funny and Weimler is very confused, and now he's going back to pure logic, and that is represented with the mathematics, and I thought that was very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I loved that. I'm always a sucker for a good pun, so yeah, no, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. So then we have Uhura is trying to figure out what the patterns are, and that brings us to her song, "Keep Us Connected." That hit hard. That was a very good song. She sang it beautifully. It's a very emotional song. It is all about her grief over her parents and her brother's death and Dahemer's death, of course. But there also is this element of the responsibilities she feels in where she is in Starfleet and family, on the Enterprise, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
The line, "So my whole life has been fix this and save you." And I'm someone who's like a fixer, and I've had, I'm into the people pleaser thing, and I have talked before on this podcast or elsewhere about how there was a lot of upheaval in my household as a child, because my grandmother with Alzheimer's and my aunt who was sick, and so that puts a kid in that position of like, oh, okay, I'm going to try to do the things that are going to make this easier for the adults in the family, because that's what I think I should be doing. And that hit me hard, and in a way that I wasn't expecting. It was very good. I did. Yeah.
No, I agree.
The cool big brother line kind of annoyed me. I wish they would have found a different word for that, or put in a different term there or something. It kind of took me out of it, but that's me.
I hadn't even thought of that before, but yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt out of place. So then she finds the pattern about having to get through, top off on the improbability levels, with some technobabble and the rest. And then we have to have the closing number with everyone on the ship, 200 some odd people.
I love the solution to this is for everyone to sing.
Yep.
Yes, it's fantastic. Yes.
We have to have a grand finale. She's Uhura says, yeah. And
I love too that. So we have that thing with Uhura is going to be the one to bring everything together. That line that we had from the trailer about how do you know how improbable it is that we're all together in this place, and I love that. I love that I have now retconned into my head every time Uhura sings for the rest of her life. She can kind of have in the back of her head, like, you know what? I saved the universe by singing. I'm going to sing. You don't like it? Too bad. Yeah. So, good song. I have a couple of comments on it, but before I get into a critique, let's talk about good things about it.
My favorite moment, I think, is, I mean, I wish it had been a little bit more on the level of Status Report, because it's very unison song, which is fine, and it works well because that's the whole point of the song. My favorite line, though, is when they're saying, I admit that I will miss the singing, and Spock's line is, I won't miss singing. Like, he tweaks the line a little bit to say that, which I thought was great.
And I think that, and the fact that he doesn't actually join in at the end until he sees that it's absolutely necessary.
Yep, they're almost there.
He's already resetting. He's already going back to his logic.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And then he says, it's our prime directive, and he's like, no, not really. That was another one, too. Which I didn't catch until I watched it yesterday to put together the outline.
That line when they keep saying it's our directive, and then they say prime directive, and Spock's like, no, not really.
It was beautifully done.
I like that they used the word explorational.
Explorational. I was waiting for them to say Muppetational.
All of it. It all works beautifully. I should have started with this. Whoever wrote these songs, I have immense amounts of respect for. I mean, to be able to combine Trek and music and some technobabble in a couple of places and have the right feel for everything. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, so this was a huge gamble of an episode. Like, there are so many ways that this could have flopped and been terrible. Similar to those old scientists. I think, like, they treaded a fine line between it being great and it just being ridiculous. And I think they pulled it off, personally.
I do too. Right. The one thing that really bugged me with this last bit is when we see Mbenga and Chapel, they're kind of running through sick bay, and all I could think of seeing him was like, do you not remember what happened to you last week? Can you just, this is totally out of, and it's supposed to be out of character. I get all of that. But like, it's just, it kind of went, I don't like that. It feels off. Again, it's supposed to, I get it, but it took me out of it for a moment.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And then it ends.
I mean,
with
that's in a way a meta callback to episodic Star Trek, when you would get a really heavy episode.
True.
I mean, I don't think Picard ever references his torture with the Cardassians again.
No.
So people get over stuff quickly when it's episodic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the last 3 episodes have been such tonal, or even 4 episodes actually, going back to Lost in Translation, have been such tonal flip-flops. But that's in keeping with some of the great seasons of Star Trek, so I'll allow it. But I absolutely acknowledge your point too, that he's not really he just murdered a Klingon.
Right.
Like,
but we don't know for sure.
I'm sorry. He murdered a Klingon. Thad, I'm sorry.
That wasn't what I was going.
Okay.
I was not going to get into that whole thing again. I was going to say we don't know for sure how much time has passed between that episode and this one.
True. We never know from one episode to the next. But yeah. So then it ends with the happy TOS music, which again very much feels.
I wanted that in the album.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other moment I wanted in the album from this song was after the Klingons sing, they cut them off, and there's a pause where you just hear the little like ping sound from the view screen, and then they resume singing. Like I wish they'd kept that little like, what the hell did we just see moment. Anyway,
and then everything wraps up. Lon's sitting in the bar, back to being alone, and talks to Una about her conversation with Kirk. Maria and Chris make plans, or Marie and Chris make plans, and he's cooking again. And Julia Child is established as part of the Star Trek universe, so that's cool. Yep.
And not even Julia Child can cover up the fact that he sang about lying to her.
Nope.
And that was beautiful. She should not have tried to say beef bourguignon in French.
Yes.
Yeah, she didn't.
Even though she's Canadian, she should have been able to. But that's also not how you make boeuf bourguignon. But I'll let that go. I don't know what he's doing there.
Well, maybe she's critiquing what he's cooking, and that's not it.
Also,
she's saying you should have cooked this.
we know this because of the scenes that have been released for the next episode. But my immediate thought was, oh, she's doomed.
Yeah, so she says she's been sent on a priority 1 mission, and we're like, oh, okay, so obviously that's going to be a problem.
That doesn't sound good. Yeah.
Plus, we know that she can't last forever because she's not in the picture in the menagerie.
Nope.
No. Well, she doesn't
that doesn't necessarily mean she has to die.
Right.
Right.
But there's no... For him to go back to Vina, she has to be the only one in his heart, I think.
Yep.
Even all extenuating circumstances accounted for. So. All right, well, anything else we want to talk about with this very unique episode of Trek?
It was pretty awesome.
Yep. I loved it, and I'm glad they did it.
Yeah. Can we get one in Discovery, too?
Well, if they haven't yet,
Well, for all we know, they have, though. They
Maybe
kept this
so.
one under wraps until the trailer.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, we all speculated from the title, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did a really good job of... one advantage of a musical is you can get through a lot of heavy emotional stuff fairly quickly because you're singing about it. And there were a lot of these loose ends that they potentially needed to tie off because I predict this shit's going to hit the fan in the next episode in terms of heavy action stuff. We know the Gorn are involved. We've known the Gorn are involved since we saw the title of the episode. And it was a good way of wrapping up a lot of stuff before we get to what's I think is going to be a pretty heavy episode. Who knows?
I like that the end credits music is like the overture you would get at a musical.
Yes.
Because it's a little bit of each of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Nice little moment of levity before, as we say, something really heavy next week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say I want to see another Trek musical, but I'm less concerned if they decide to do one.
I can say I want to see another Trek musical. I would love to see a Lower Decks musical.
Okay, yes. That would make beautiful sense. And the nice thing about that is
Requiem
they
for
can
a
bring
Hug.
Anybody. Requiem for a Hug. Yes.
I love someone tweeted this week that what if can you imagine if Mariner and Boimler looked up the stardate and realized that they were just a couple weeks away from the musical incident?
Well, we saw that they mention it in the trailer. Maybe they do talk about that. I would love to hear them talk about that.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd love to hear anybody talk about that because it had to have been a huge news event. Events in people's lives that hit the news. Yeah.
And it apparently affected all of the Federation, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we need the novel that's talking about all the rest of what everybody else was singing about. That's right, because April was singing.
Yeah, so KKR Holdings, get on that.
Yeah. Carl, thanks so much for joining us for this discussion today. Where can listeners find you online, and is there anything you'd like to talk about for them to go find online?
So you can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter. I'm at Listening to Film. I'm also on Mastodon at Listening to Film at 10forward.social. That's really the best place to find me.
All right, Thad, where can people find you when you're not putting together a musical score for your day-to-day life?
I usually just do that spontaneously. But best place to find me is also on the website formerly known as Twitter at Tyrannicus. I am also on Blue Sky and Mastodon. And as with Carl, you can hear me on License to Spiel.
All right.
Chrissie, where can people find you when you are not refusing to sing?
The thing is I sing a lot, just not, like, publicly. But if you run into me in my car, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But when I'm not doing that, in addition to here on Infinite Diversity, you can find me on History with the Szilagys here on the BQN. That's a mostly twice-weekly short history podcast I do with my fellow historian husband, Jason. I'm also happy to chat about our shows in the BQN Collective on Facebook, but I'm probably easiest to get a hold of on that website artist formerly known as Twitter, at The Goddess Livia. That's TheGoddessLivia, where I guess I don't tweet, but I just post about Star Trek history and leftist politics.
Well, it is never okay to dead name a person. It is always okay to dead name corporations and buildings. So I will continue to say tweet.
Ah, yes.
Also the Sears Tower.
Yeah. And Pine Knob Theater by Detroit that got renamed as the DTE Energy Theater. I don't even know why I said that, because how many people are going to know what I'm talking about there? I'll just take that out. Anyway.
Don't forget all our other great shows on BQN, and here's Amy Nelson to tell you all about them.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissie and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissie and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev, a Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark. And Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
And thank you so much for tuning in to Infinite Diversity. Thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Mark White for the awesome show art. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and don't forget to rate and review us there as well.
If you want to reach out, you can find the network on the website formerly known as Twitter at BQN Podcasts, and also specifically at IDIC Podcast. You can also talk about any and all of the BQN podcasts in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective. To the best of my knowledge, Facebook is staying Facebook for the foreseeable future. When you next hear from us, we'll be wrapping up Season 2 of Strange New Worlds with Hegemony.
One thing, when you saw the subspace fold, did it remind you of anything completely not Trekkie?
No, I can't say that it did.
Probably will when you tell me, but
Rainbow Road and Mario Kart.
Okay,
oh
I can see that.
Yep. Okay.
I saw that and I was like, oh, it's Rainbow Road, just because it would look. All right, maybe that's a stretch. Whatever.